You started a company. Looks more like a toy for bored kids playing CEO. Why don't you do something that actually makes money? That was my dad's warm greeting the day I showed up to support his $16 million luxury development pitch. I didn't walk in as some kid begging for approval. I walked in as a silent investor, $2 million out of my own pocket, believing that maybe, just maybe, this time he'd look at me and finally say, the words I've waited to hear all my life, I'm proud of you. But instead, he looked at my life's work and labeled it a hobby. What he didn't know was that the entire market analysis platform he was using to impress investors, that sleek dashboard tracking buyer sentiment, predictive trends, and revenue simulations, wasn't just some software he rented. It was mine, built by my team, powered by my startup. The same little project he mocked for years. I stayed quiet, watched him click through our interface like he invented it, watched a room full of suits nod at his every word while my code ran the show. He thought he was the master of the stage. He had no idea he was standing on a foundation I built, and that one move from me could erase everything. Keep listening to hear how I turned my dad's joke of a startup into a billion-dollar play, and what I did when he tried to steal my spotlight. I was the only child in the family who didn't follow my dad into finance. While he closed deals in corner offices and played golf with hedge fund partners, I buried myself in data science and machine learning. My idea of success wasn't Wall Street. It was building tools that made markets smarter. When I turned down a job at his firm after college, he didn't even pretend to be disappointed. You'd rather play with algorithms than work with real money. Fine. Waste your life. I started a company with two friends from grad school. We worked out of a subleased warehouse that smelled like oil and failed dreams. But what we built, it worked. Our AI platform could analyze housing trends, buyer behavior, predictive yields, everything investors needed to make smarter real estate plays. We licensed it to brokerages, then to wealth management firms, eventually to developers who needed real-time intelligence. We grew, quietly, profitably. Meanwhile, my dad stayed exactly who he'd always been, loud, commanding, and allergic to admitting anyone might know something he didn't. When he launched his legacy project, a $16 million luxury real estate development called Echelon Heights, he hit a wall. His financial models were dated, his data incomplete. The investors he was chasing wanted precision, not old-school confidence. That's when he came to me. Well, not directly. His VP of strategy reached out, said they needed a market analytics dashboard to make their pitch to an international fund. I knew they were desperate, and I said yes, for free. I integrated our system into their back-end, customized every metric, visual, and projection to fit his vision. Not just that I put $2 million of my own capital into the project. Why? Because part of me still believed that helping my dad win would finally make me worthy in his eyes. But here's the thing about pride. It blinds you. And my dad's pride, it had teeth. At the first investor meeting, I watched him scroll through my dashboard, and claim it was licensed from an overseas tech partner. When they asked about its origin, he waved it off. It's just demo software. Temporary. As if the tech I built, the product that paid my team salaries, that took years of coding and testing and pitching, was some disposable toy. And he didn't stop there. At a family dinner that night with his business partners and some out-of-town guests, he laughed and said, "My kid's got this cute startup. You know, modern-day lemonade stand." They all laughed, except me. I smiled, nodded, and poured myself another glass of wine. But something inside me cracked. It wasn't just the insult. It was the realization I had given everything to someone who saw me as nothing. I didn't tell anyone, not my team, not my partner, not my friends. But that night, I logged into the admin portal, and I stared at the API keys we had issued for the Echelon Heights platform. One click, and their entire data pipeline would go dark. No metrics, no projections, no credibility. But I didn't press it. Not yet. Instead, I waited. Because part of me still hoped, maybe next meeting, maybe next call, he'd acknowledge the value I brought, the role I played, but he never did. Not once. Every time I showed up, I was just helping out. Every time I spoke, I was interrupted. Every time someone complimented the dashboard, he took credit for finding the right people. People I was his child. I was the founder. But to him, I was just a tool. And when the biggest opportunity of his life came knocking, when a major German investment group asked for a technical deep dive, I was the one who flew in to present. I broke down the model architecture, how the AI processed regional comps, how it optimized leasing strategies in mixed-use spaces. The investors were impressed. They asked one final question: who developed this platform? My dad leaned forward and smiled. "It's proprietary. We're working with an overseas partner. My son here just does the demos." That was it. No mention of my company. No credit. Not even a glance. He stripped me of my identity in a room where I was the only reason the meeting was happening. And in that moment, something in me went cold. I flew home that night and opened the admin panel again. This time I didn't hesitate. I revoked the API keys. By morning, the dashboards were gone. Every chart, every forecast, every insight offline. It didn't just disappear. It exposed everything. Because without our tech, my dad had nothing but empty promises. And the next act wasn't just revenge, it was correction. Coming up, when the investors called and everything collapsed, how my dad reacted, what I told him face to face, and the move I made that changed both our futures forever. The breakthrough and the shocking reveal. 1,000 words. The morning after I pulled the plug, my phone buzzed like a dying engine. Emails, missed calls, group chats exploding. The Echelon Heights dashboard was completely offline. Investors were calling. Developers were panicking. The German investment firm, the one set to inject another $10 million into the next phase, wanted an emergency meeting. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I walked into my own office glass walls, 50-person team, the hum of machines running code I wrote, and I sat with my CTO. "We may be dealing with some fallout," I told him. He raised an eyebrow. "From a personal decision, one I don't regret." I took a deep breath, then replied to the German firm. I asked for a one-on-one Zoom call. Not with my dad, just me. They agreed, and for the first time, I got to tell my story. I walked them through the origins of the tech, how we'd trained our models using decades of market data, how we'd run simulations that consistently outperformed traditional valuation metrics, how our current clients, dozens of brokerages, asset firms, and property developers were already operating at lower risk and higher yield because of our product. And then I showed them the receipts, our IP filings, our source code audits, the white label agreement my dad's team had never signed. Silence. Then came the question I'd been expecting. So, the system was never owned by the Echelon Heights project. I shook my head. Never. It was temporarily licensed under verbal permission. That's since been revoked. A long pause. Then the lead investor nodded. Thank you for your clarity. That's all we needed to hear. 30 minutes later, I got a text from my dad. What the hell did you do? I ignored it. An hour later, he showed up. At my office. No appointment. Storm past reception slammed the conference room door shut. Are you insane? Do you know what you've done? They're pulling the money. The whole deal's falling apart. I stared at him calmly. I know exactly what I've done. He pointed a trembling finger at me. You just killed your own father's project for what ego? I stood up, looked him in the eyes. No. I killed the illusion that you could steal from me and walk away clean. His face went pale. Steal? Are you out of your mind? I gave you exposure connections, a seat at the table. You gave me nothing. You used my tech without credit. You erased me from my own work. And the minute it helped you get in the room, you tried to shut the door behind me. He tried to respond, but I cut him off. You didn't build Echelon on Heights. I did. You stood on top of my platform and claimed it as yours. Well, now you know what that platform really costs. He sank into a chair, deflated, quiet for the first time in his life. I thought that might be it, but it wasn't, because 2 days later, I got another call. A rival developer one, who had just acquired land for a near-identical luxury project, wanted a meeting. They'd heard what happened with Echelon Heights. They weren't laughing. They were impressed. I met them in Singapore, presented our solution, showed them how with our predictive tools, they could launch smarter, faster, and under budget. Their board approved the deal in 72 hours. We signed a 5-year exclusive partnership. Our platform would power every inch of their new flagship build. And just like that, my dad's biggest rival became my biggest client. I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it because they respected the work, and because respect had become more valuable to me than any inheritance. A week later, the press caught on. Startup founder signs, 40-some son. Deal with rising property. Giant real estate, tech disruptor, powers, new development. Boom. Echelon Heights loses funding amid tech ownership dispute. And then came the headline that burned its way through our family group chat. Developers, son pulls plug on father's project in bold business move. No one replied, not even my cousins. My dad never called, never texted again. But his absence said more than words ever could. I wasn't his shadow anymore. I had stepped into my own light and left him standing in the dark. Next up, my company explodes. I make the biggest speech of my life, and finally I stop chasing the one thing I never needed his approval. The fallout didn't take long. Within 48 hours of my tech being pulled, the German investors officially withdrew. Their legal team cited uncertainty over technological IP and concerns over project transparency. In other words, they didn't want to be tied to a lie. The Echelon Heights project collapsed like a luxury house of cards. Contractors froze operations. Design teams stopped showing up. Rumors spread like wildfire. The flagship development was dead before it ever broke ground. And at the center of that collapse was my dad. For a mammoth who had ruled boardrooms like a king, the fall from grace was brutal. Some of his old partners started ghosting him. Others demanded their money back. His name, once synonymous with confidence, was now a cautionary tale. I knew I would have to face him again, but I didn't expect him to storm into my office at 7:30 on a Monday morning like a man possessed. He didn't knock. He didn't greet anyone. He barged in like the world owed him something, and I was the only one left to collect from. "You smug little bastard." That was how he opened. I stayed seated. "You happy now?" he snarled. "You got your little revenge. Blew up your own father's project just to prove some childish point I didn't say anything." So he kept going. "You think you're a big shot now, signing deals, getting your name in Forbes? Let me tell you something, kid. Those people, they'll use you up and toss you aside the second you stop being interesting." I took a deep breath, finally stood up. "At least they see me. At least they know I built something." He slammed his hand on the glass table, hard enough to rattle my coffee cup. "I made you." His voice echoed off the walls. "If it weren't for me, you wouldn't know the first thing about business. I gave you the world. You just didn't know how to use it." I walked slowly around the table, leaned in close enough to smell the desperation on his breath. "You gave me your voice," in my head, telling me I wasn't good enough, smart enough, real enough. "You taught me fear, not business." He tried to talk over me. "No. What I raised my voice. Calm, clear. And you know what hurts the most? I spent years building something I thought might finally earn your respect. I thought maybe this time you'd see me as more than a hobbyist. But you didn't. You used me. You smiled at the investors while stepping on my shoulders. You made sure my name stayed in the shadows." He laughed bitterly. "You think I needed your name on that project? You're still a kid playing with code. I've closed deals bigger than your net worth." I smiled. "And now your deals are dead because the code you laughed at. It's the only thing anyone wanted from you." He went quiet. For the first time, I saw it panic. Real panic. Not anger, not pride, just fear. The great builder, the fearless closer. The father who thought legacy was something you inherited by force. Now, staring at a son who no longer needed anything from him. He turned away, ran a hand through his thinning hair. "So what, you just cut me out? Just like that? You think the world's going to reward you for this?" I crossed my arms. "No, but they already are." I tossed a thick folder onto the table. He opened it. Inside were press clippings, investor letters, screenshots of our new client dashboards. The rival project, the one he once mocked, was moving forward, backed by an even bigger capital fund. My company's logo was on every single deck. He stared at it like he was seeing a foreign language. "You sold it to them." I nodded. "They paid full price and gave us equity." He let out a strangled laugh. "You stabbed your own father in the back." For money, I leaned closer. "No, I stabbed your pride because it was suffocating me. And if you ever cared about me more than your ego, you'd understand the difference." He looked at me, and for a moment, he wasn't angry. He was just sad, small, exposed, like a man finally realizing the empire he built had no heirs, only survivors. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something else, maybe even apologize. But he didn't. Instead, he walked out. Didn't slam the door this time. Didn't yell. Just left. And when the door clicked shut, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. That was the moment. I stopped waiting for his validation. Stopped chasing his approval like it was the oxygen I needed to breathe. I wasn't his shadow anymore. I wasn't his apprentice. I wasn't his mistake. I was the architect of my own damn story. And he was just another chapter I outgrew. Next up, my company explodes. I win a global award, and I finally understand what success really means when it no longer has to prove anything to anyone. Apame, like Timon. After that day, I stopped looking back. There were no more late-night replays in my head, wondering if I'd gone too far. No more daydreams about maybe next time he'll understand. I closed that chapter and poured myself into the future, and the future, it came fast and loud. Within 3 months, my company inked a multi-year deal with Orion Capital, the same fund that had pulled out of my dad's project. They didn't just want the platform. They wanted the vision behind it. We expanded, recruited 3 new engineering teams across Asia, scaled from 5 people in a cramped WeWork office to nearly 80 specialists across 5 countries. Our product powered investment decisions for portfolios worth over $2.3 billion. And then the nomination came. It was a Tuesday morning. I was reviewing UX updates when one of my team leads burst in. "You're not going to believe this. I thought something was broken." Instead, she held up her phone. "You've been nominated for Founder of the Year, Asia Tech Awards." I laughed, thought it was a joke. But there it was, my name in the official list right next to founders I used to read about in Wired and TechCrunch. I felt everything. Shock, joy, and something else, peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from winning, the kind that comes from not needing to win anymore. Still, when the awards night came, I didn't know how to feel. The ballroom at the Intercontinental buzzed with cameras, billionaires, AI prodigies, and people whose faces I'd only seen on startup documentaries. I stood backstage, sweaty palms, listening as they introduced the finalists. And then they said my name for disrupting the way real estate capital flows in emerging markets, for building technology that turns complex market dynamics into real-time decisions, for proving that vision beats legacy. The Founder of the Year award goes to. The rest was a blur. Applause, lights, a weighty glass trophy in my hands, and then silence. I stepped up to the mic. I hadn't written a speech. I hadn't planned on winning, but I knew exactly what to say. A few years ago, someone told me I was just playing with toys, that what I built was a hobby. That code couldn't compete with capital. I paused, looked around the room. They were wrong. A soft ripple of laughter. What I built didn't come from a boardroom. It came from being underestimated, from being told I didn't belong, from having to learn that being ignored isn't the worst thing. Sometimes it's freedom. I held the mic a little tighter. This award isn't just about tech. It's about reclaiming value, owning your story, even when the people you wanted to impress the most don't understand it. The applause was louder this time, but I didn't look for him in the crowd. I knew he wasn't there. He didn't call, didn't message, and I didn't expect him to. The next morning, I walked into the office, set the award on a side table, and told my team, "We celebrate for 5 minutes. Then we get back to work." because success wasn't a destination. It was momentum, and I was finally building mine without anyone's shadow over it. Still, there were moments when I'd stare out my window, looking over the skyline, and think about the boy I used to be, the one who thought his father's approval was the currency of self-worth, the one who begged to be seen. Now, I didn't need to be seen. I just needed to see clearly, and I finally did. A few weeks later, a young founder emailed me asking for mentorship, said my story had inspired him. He was starting a data analytics firm in Bangkok, didn't have investors, didn't have clout. But he had fire. I replied that same day. Because if I'd learned anything, it was this: you don't wait for a seat at someone else's table. You build your own. And if your father won't clap for you, you learn to clap for yourself, and then teach others how to rise. Coming up, the final phone call, the final words, and why walking away wasn't about bitterness, but about finally becoming someone I could respect. A month after the award, I got the call. It was early, maybe 6 a.m. I was prepping for a meeting with a new real estate partner in Singapore when my phone lit up with a number I hadn't saved but instantly recognized. I hesitated, then picked up. So, you happy now? It was my father. His voice was low, clipped, the kind of tone you use when you're holding in either rage or grief. You got your damn award. You took the deal. You cost me my entire project. My investors left. They think I lied to them. I stayed silent. He kept going. They removed me from the board, from my own vision. You proud of that, son? You win, I lose. That what you wanted? I took a breath. Calm, controlled. No, I didn't want to win. I just wanted you to stop shrinking me every time I walked into a room. Silence. You always said I was playing games, that my work didn't matter. But you used it. You built your whole pitch on it. You built your dream on what I created and then told people I was just your demo guy. He didn't reply, but I could hear his breathing, heavier than I remembered, almost tired. I'm not mad you failed, Dad. I'm mad you tried to erase me just to look bigger. Still silence. Then a whisper. I don't know who you are anymore. I looked out the window of my office high above the skyline. My team was already buzzing in the background. Deadlines, code pushes, client calls. I answered without hesitation. I'm the version of me that no longer needs your permission, and I hung up. That was the last time we spoke. I didn't block his number, didn't tell anyone what happened. I just moved on. Not with anger, not with revenge in my pocket, but with clarity. The startup he once called a hobby. It now powers over $3 billion in global real estate decisions. My team speaks at conferences I once paid to attend, and I've become a silent investor in 3 companies run by young founders who, like me, were told they'd never make it. I don't tell them how to prove anyone wrong. I teach them how to stop needing proof. And as for my dad, last I heard, he's consulting on smaller projects, no longer on magazine covers, no longer the giant I once thought he was. He's just a man now, a man who couldn't imagine his child succeeding in a world he didn't understand. And maybe that's the real tragedy. But for me, I'm not chasing his acceptance anymore. I'm building something he never could, a world where people like me don't have to beg to belong. You can spend your life waiting for someone to clap for you. Or you can build something so loud, the silence no longer matters.